Hi everybody. Well, we are on our way to Unionville High School for my first book sale jaunt of 2025. I look forward to this every February, late February. It is a frigid February day. The car thermometer just climbed to 21 degrees, and we might get over freezing today, but that's been a rarity all winter. It's been an incredibly cold winter for a change. And we've even had some snow. No blizzards, thankfully, knock on wood. But yeah, I'm always excited to do this Unionville High School sale because it's a big one. And I've had lots of success over the years finding some gems, and they don't charge a whole lot for their books. I'm going on the first day. It has just opened. It's currently 8:04 a.m. I'm about 5 or 10 minutes away, and yeah, we'll see how crowded it is. It's usually very crowded, which I don't like, but that's what you get with these book sales. Another thing I don't like are these bulk buyers who, with their scanners and their carts, and they just hoard books, and they can be rather obnoxious and aggressive, and so I try to stay away from them as much as possible because I'm a peace-loving man. That being said, I've sharpened my elbows. I'm ready to own my space. Thankfully, I'm rather tall, large, so I can occupy some turf when people get pushy, but more like a rock, like a boulder that you can't move, than somebody who's going to storm in and barge in on you. Anyway, it's a social thing, or an antisocial thing, as it were. But on to other interesting matters. So Unionville, if you don't know Southeast Pennsylvania, Unionville's in Chester County. I live in Westchester. Unionville's, I don't know how many miles west of us. It's maybe 8 miles, something like that. Not far. And Unionville is a village that's just north of Kennett Square, which is a beautiful small town in the heart of what we call mushroom country. So a lot of the mushrooms come from there, from this area. They're grown here. And Unionville, like a lot of Chester County, is quite affluent. A lot of rich people around here. Not everybody, of course, but it's a lot of gentleman farms, a lot of horse farms or horse ranches. It's still pretty rural, although it's been somewhat gentrified or suburbanized. There are lots of McMansions here and there, little developments, but it's still a really lovely area. And I think because it's a relatively affluent school district, Unionville, it's good for books, because when people donate their books, a lot of these folks have books to donate, and they donate some good stuff. And I think it's run by the parent-teacher organization. I always get confused by this roundabout. I hope I'm going the right way. Anyway, I got lost a couple of years ago. I got turned around. But yeah, we're close to it now. So what am I looking for from this book sale? Well, I'm going to make a beeline for the classics section. So the thing I'm most on the lookout for currently are Penguin Classics, like I've talked about in some other videos. I think this is it. Yeah. All right. Yeah, everything looks different in the morning light. We'll see how crowded it is. So I'm looking for classics. That's always like my first go-to. Yeah, parking lot looks very full as usual. Just have to make sure I don't hit any pedestrians here or cars. I always like to park in the back of the parking lot where there's a little more room and make a long walk. So I want to look for kind of give an eye for looking for vintage mass market paperbacks, perhaps stuff that I haven't traditionally looked for. Those are probably going to be really affordable. I want to keep an eye out for history books. I want to keep an eye out for sci-fi, fantasy. I'll probably shy away from trade paperback fiction and hardcover fiction. I'm just not really on the lookout for that stuff. They always have a ton of that, but I don't think there's anything I'm wanting in that way. And then, philosophy, religion, I always give that a look. Well, it's really just the pleasure of the hunt. What do they have? It's always filled with surprises. You never know what you're going to stumble into. So I'm going to head on in. I'll brave the crowds here. It is quite a full parking lot. We'll see how it goes. I'll check back in later. Well, I'm back from the book sale in Unionville, and oh my God, what a book haul I scored. Sometimes when you ask the book gods to be kind to you, they really deliver. And the Unionville High School book sale delivered big time this year. I never expected to find what I found. And this was such a good haul that I went back on Sunday for the bag sale. Just to give you some parameters here, I got 69 books total, 31 on Saturday, and they cost $1 a piece. And then the rest of the 69 books on Sunday, I filled a bag for $15. They give you the bag, and it was a nice kind of canvas style bag. And I also got 2 DVDs as part of that bag sale as well. So that's 65 cents per item. And wow, I am set. So let me try to march through this thermonuclear mega haul as fast as I can. It's going to maybe take a while, but I'll try to move quickly. I'll start with a book that actually was a double, and I shouldn't have gotten it, but I'll explain why I did. So this is 3 famous short novels, William Faulkner, Spotted Horses, Old Man and the Bear. This is vintage paperback, and these are my favorite paperback editions of William Faulkner, the ones that look like this cover. So I collect these, and it turns out I already have this one. And when I got to the sale, I made a beeline for the classics section, and I started grabbing a lot of books. You'll be amazed at all the Penguin classics I found. But I found this one too, and I just threw it in a bag, meaning to go back later and sift through the books, because I do keep a note in my iPhone of the missing titles from this Faulkner collection. So the thing is, I just forgot that it was in my bag, and I didn't get around to weeding it out. There's three Faulkner books I'm still looking for from this series. I'll see if I can remember them. The Collected Stories, I think it's called. A Fable, and there's one other one. I can't remember it right now. Anyway, it's in my phone. So that was a duplicate, unfortunately. But the spreadsheet really helped me with the Penguin Classics when I was sifting. So let's move on. This is kind of a double, but it's in a different edition. So I was talking on my last I think it was my last video about Penguin Classics, and this is the first series. And these are the ones that I had about 15 or 20 of these, and I sold them as a lot on eBay. I figured I would pick up this Gottfried von Strasbourg Tristan with the Tristan of Thomas, translated by A.T. Hatto. Penguin Classics. This is what the old covers used to look like. So I thought I'm going to grab a couple of these as I move along. This was the only one of this series that I found at the sale. But I already have this Gottfried von Strasbourg's Tristan. I don't know if it's the same translator, though. I haven't looked that up yet. I have to go back down the basement and fetch my other copy. But I did read that copy. This is medieval romance. And I have to say, of all the Tristan romances that I've encountered, the Gottfried von Strasbourg was my favorite. It's very rich, and it's really an incredible story. Of course, this influenced Wagner and his opera Tristan and Isolde. It figures prominently in the works of James Joyce. I first became exposed to the Tristan through Joseph Campbell's work, Power of Myth and all that stuff. And this really turned me on to medieval literature in a big way. So for the sake of having this edition, I got this. I grabbed it. It only cost me $1. All right, this was one of my favorite Penguin Classics discoveries, and it's John Reed, 10 Days That Shook the World. This is a story of the Russian Revolution, written by an eyewitness. And they made this into a film. Wasn't it called Reds with Warren Beatty? I didn't see the film, but it was popular back in the day. And I might move this up pretty close to the front of the TBR list because I want to learn more about the Russian Revolution. Revolutions are on my mind lately. I wonder why. Moving along, Oladua Equiano, The Interesting Narrative and Other Writings, another Penguin Classics. You're gonna find a lot of Penguin Classics on this first, and I'm going through day one book haul here. I was looking for Penguin Classics, and man, oh man, did Unionville deliver. I just found a whole bunch of them. I got to the sale a little shortly after 8 o'clock when it opened. It was probably 8:15, 8:20. The sale was already crowded, but this is such a well-organized book sale. I'll get more into that later. But anyway, I just started finding all these Penguin Classics, and I didn't grab them all. Some of them I already have. Some of them I didn't like the condition that they were in, or I wasn't quite interested in them, but I grabbed plenty of them. I felt almost like I had first dibs on them, too. Anyway, this is you would classify this as slave narrative, I guess. So Oladao Equiano's narrative recounts his kidnapping in Africa at the age of 11, his service as the slave of an officer in the British Navy, and his years of labor on slave ships until he was able to purchase his freedom in 1766. So it tells that whole story. This is a revised and expanded edition, includes twice the number of previously known published and unpublished works by Equiano. I had covered this author in an American Lit survey course. Was it American Lit or a World Lit survey? I forget which one. But we read a couple chapters from it. Now I have a whole volume, so I'm really excited about that. Let's see what other Penguin Classics we have in store. How about D.H. Lawrence, Women in Love? D.H. Lawrence is not my favorite author, but I have not read enough of his work to really render a judgment on him. So he's a 20th century author. I'm kind of into reading 20th century fiction lately as I kind of move my way up through history. So this would be an author I want to read soon. I've read Sons and Lovers. I've read some of his short stories and some of his poetry. I don't think I've read another novel by him. Not that I can remember. I read a work of his literary criticism about American literature. That was quite a good book. But this actually, I think, is a sequel, isn't it? It's a sequel to The Rainbow. And although written in 1916, it remained unpublished in England until 1921. And I do think I have The Rainbow in a Penguin Classics. Let me look it up in my spreadsheet while we're talking. Yes, I do. I have the first part, and I'll read that first, and then I'll follow it up with Women in Love. Let me know in the comments what you think of D.H. Lawrence. Okay, more Penguin Classics coming up. How about Elizabeth Gaskell, Cranford? This is Victorian period literature. A portrait of the residents of an English country town in the mid-19th century, Cranford relates the adventures of Miss Mattie and Miss Deborah, two middle-aged spinster sisters striving to live with dignity in reduced circumstances. Through a series of vignettes, Elizabeth Gaskell portrays a community governed by old-fashioned habits and dominated by friendships between women and so forth. I have another book by her called North and South in a Penguin Classics edition, and she's an author I really have not read yet, so she's definitely a TBR type of author. Heard good things about her, and yeah, it was great to get another pickup of her work. Now, I've said on the channel in a couple videos ago, I think, that I'm big on Penguin Classics, but I don't have a whole bunch of the Penguin 20th Century Classics. I think sometimes they're called Penguin Modern Classics. And there's a whole separate volume on those, for, one of those reference works, which I mean to get one of these days. So now I have my eye out for those. And I found a couple of them in this book sale. One is John Steinbeck, The Winter of Our Discontent. And you can see these are the penguins that have those pale green back covers and spines. All right. And I was never as drawn to like the color themes, just judging book by a cover here. I just kind of shied away from these because I was always scouting for like the Penguin Classics proper. But I'm a lot more open to getting these now because there's so many authors who started here who are now ending up in the main Penguin Classics listing, but and then others who maybe don't and who never crossed over, I'm still interested in them. So this is a book. What's this about? I love the title. In this book, John Steinbeck returns to the high standards of the Grapes of Wrath and to the social themes that made his early work so impressive and so powerful, says Saul Bellow, who blurbs it here. What's it about? Ethan Hawley, a descendant of proud New England sea captains, works as a clerk in the grocery store owned by an Italian immigrant. His wife is restless. His teenage children are troubled and discontented, hungry for the tantalizing material comforts he cannot provide. Then one day, in a moment of moral crisis, Ethan decides to take a holiday from his own scrupulous standards. And the plot thickens, no doubt. Here's another John Steinbeck, 20th Century Classics Penguin, a Russian journal. Nice cover. Has an introduction by Susan Schillinglaw. It's Steinbeck and Kappa's account of their journey through Cold War Russia. It's a classic piece of reportage and travel writing. So Steinbeck and acclaimed war photographer Robert Capa ventured into the Soviet Union to do some reporting for the New York Herald Tribune. And there are photos in here, which is nice. Okay, so this will be a good read. Maybe good to follow up my John Reed 10 Days That Shook the World with that John Steinbeck covering the Soviet Union many years later. All right, here is a newer Penguin classic. This one was published. It's an old book. It's old fiction, but it was published recently, 2016 it looks like. And it's Herman Melville, Billy Budd Bartleby and Other Stories. Nice cover. I've read all this stuff already, but it's nice to have it in a very clean Penguin Classics edition. Yeah, just so happy that I found all these penguins. You wouldn't believe. Did I manifest it? I don't think so, but what do you think about that? Here's another Penguin Classics by an author I really don't know well at all, but it looked, I kind of bought it because it looked like it had a cool cover, and I was just grabbing penguins right and left, and it just looked interesting. It looked like an interesting book. So tell me if you know this author. William Trevor, Fools of Fortune. Here's what we have to say about this. When an informer's body is found shortly after the First World War on the estate of the Quintons, a wealthy Irish family, an appalling cycle of revenge is set in motion. Led by a zealous sergeant, the Black and Tans fire the family home, and only young Willie and his mother Evie escape alive. Fatherless, Willie grows into manhood while his alcoholic mother's bitter resentment festers. And though he finds love, Willie is unable to leave the terrible injuries of the past behind. So yeah, Graham Greene calls it, he says, to my mind, Trevor's best novel and a very fine one. So yeah, something different. Moving right along, guess what I have? Another Penguin classic. found at the Unionville book sale. This is Arthur Conan Doyle, The Hound of the Baskervilles. So some Sherlock Holmes. I love Sherlock Holmes. I haven't read Sherlock Holmes in so many, actually decades, but I first read this Hound of the Baskervilles in a Magnum Easy Eye paperback edition, and that's a book I no longer have in my possession. I offloaded it many years ago, and it was just great to find some Sherlock Holmes in Penguin Classics. So yeah, this is just classic mystery detective fiction. Tells the story of an ancient curse, the specter of a gigantic hound roaming the moors that is said to have haunted the Baskerville family for generations. When Sir Charles Baskerville is found dead, it is up to Holmes and Watson to protect the Baskerville heir and discover the truth. Rationalism is pitted against the supernatural, good against evil, as Holmes seeks to defeat a foe, almost his equal. Yeah, great story. Classic Sherlock Holmes. Okay, moving on. This was a cool find. It's a book that I have read before, but it also includes some other writings which I may not have read. And this is a classic of sociology, and it's Max Weber, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, and other writings. I did not read it in a Penguin Classics edition, and I got rid of that book a long time ago. This is a much nicer copy, like the cover, and let's see what this is all about. In The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, Max Weber opposes the Marxist concept of dialectical materialism and relates the rise of capitalist economy to the Calvinist belief in the moral value of hard work and the fulfillment of one's worldly duties. Based on the original German 1905 edition, this new translation includes, along with Weber's treatise, an illuminating introduction, a wealth of explanatory notes, and exemplary responses and remarks, both from Weber and his critics, that were sparked by its publication. And they call it arguably the most important work of 20th century sociology. Yeah, high praise. What else is in here? Oh, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Moving right along. This was a nice discovery too. I like how all the Penguin Classics I found span all these different eras, and this one is about the 1960s. And it is edited with an introduction by Ann Charters, and it is the Portable 60s Reader. How about that? Love the cover. This is an anthology. From civil rights to free love, JFK to LSD, Woodstock to the moonwalk. The 60s was a time of change, political unrest, and radical experiments in the arts, sexuality, and personal identity. In this anthology of essays, poetry, and fiction by some of America's most gifted writers, renowned 60s authority Ann Charters sketches the unfolding of this most turbulent decade. It's organized thematically in linked chapters, chronicling important social, political, and cultural movements. So you have lots of famous luminaries in here. Martin Luther King Jr., James Baldwin, Alice Walker, Robert Lowell, Eudora Welty, Bob Dylan, Malcolm X, Susan Sontag, Denise Levertov, Norman Mailer, Allen Ginsberg, Hunter Thompson, William S. Burroughs, Timothy Leary, Ken Kesey, Lenny Bruce, Ishmael Reed, Sylvia Plath, Ann Sexton, Rachel Carson, and Gary Snyder. Incredible. For $1. Yeah, love it. And it is so clean. The pages are a little tanned, but other than that, it's not marked up at all. Nice floppy paperback. That's a winner. Next up is a book I already have in a Heritage Press edition, and I've had like umpteen different versions of this over the years. But I never had it in a Penguin Classics edition, and that is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Yep. So this classic, I'm due for a reread of this one of these days soon. It's been so long since I've read it. I remember reading it for the first time in high school, and it was a slog, but it is, I think I read it again in college and liked it better. I'm sure I would like it even more on the third or fourth read through. Moving right along, let's talk about a classic from German philosophy, and this is Friedrich Nietzsche, Twilight of the Idols and the Antichrist. I think these are later works of Nietzsche when he was maybe starting to lose his marbles. In these two devastating works, Nietzsche offers a sustained and often vitriolic attack on the morality and the beliefs of his time, in particular those of Hegel, Kant, and Schopenhauer. Twilight of the Idols is a grand declaration of war on reason, psychology, and theology that combines highly charged personal attacks on his contemporaries with a lightning tour of his own philosophy. It also paves the way for the Antichrist, Nietzsche's final assault on institutional Christianity, in which he identifies himself with the Dionysian artist and confronts Christ, the only opponent he feels worthy of him. And it has an introduction by Michael Tanner, translated by R.J. Hollingdale. So yeah, I like the cover. It does have some price sticker action here, and this I'm going to have to get off of the spine. Not one of the better condition ones I picked up, but it's a nice pickup all the same. Still in the first bag. So on day one in the sale, I filled 1.5 of my own shopping bags that I brought. And the Penguin Classics just keep on rolling in. It was an amazing run. This is an author I just finished reading his collected fictions, and it's Jorge Luis Borges, The Aleph and Other Stories. I was thrilled to find this. As I said in my review of that book, I think Borges is probably better sampled in like smaller collections, and this is one of those. And The Aleph is, I think, one of his better stories. So this includes the collection The Aleph from 1949. Also The Maker, 1960. And it's the same translator, Andrew Hurley, I believe, that did the full collected fiction. So this is kind of getting us a couple slices from that larger volume, and it's got a cool cover too. So yeah, this was nice find. Okay, this was one of the only hardcovers I found, and it's an upgrade for me, and that would be T.S. Eliot, The Complete Poems and Plays. This you see all the time. And this is a very clean hardcover edition, and it's going to replace my existing hardcover, same edition, but I found that one used, and it's heavily marked up to the point of distraction. The former owner, was using like magenta highlighter and things like that. So it's kind of hard. It mars the poems for me, whereas this looks kind of clean from start to finish. I don't see any markings at all. And yeah, so it's a nice upgrade. We'll finish out bag one with another one of the Penguin 20th Century Classics. This is a book I have read before. I read this one in high school, 11th grade honors English class. We read it. We were doing a lot of American literature that year, and it is by Sinclair Lewis, and it is his famous novel, Babbitt. Babbitt. This is 20th Century Classics, Penguin, introduction and notes by James M. Hutchinson, a satirical portrait of a town obsessed by capitalism and the values of the marketplace. George F. Babbitt, a conniving, prosperous real estate man from Zenith, Ohio, revels in his popularity, his success, and especially in the material rewards they bring. He bullies his wife, flirts with other women, and patronizes the less successful. But when his best friend is sent to prison for killing his wife, Babbitt's middle-class complacency is shattered, and he rebels, seeking a more meaningful life. His small revolt is quickly defeated, however, by public opinion and his own need for acceptance. Babbitt captures the flavor of America during the economic boom years of the 1920s, and its protagonist has become the symbol of middle-class mediocrity, his name an enduring part of the American lexicon. I've known a lot of Babbitts in my middle-class lifetime, for sure. And I don't remember much of the first reading experience of Babbitt in high school. I remember it was kind of a dull read, but I was in 11th grade. What do we know at that age, right? But the character Babbitt really stuck with me, and like that stereotype, that symbol, that resonated with me. Even at that young age, I knew there were Babbitts all around me, and they continue to this day. We'll finish out bag number one with a couple more Penguin classics. Here is Anthony Trollope, Barchester Towers. Is this his most famous novel? I have not read this one. I've only read one Trollope novel. I hate to say it, but I think it was The Warden. and I read that. It wasn't Penguin. It might have been like a Wordsworth Classics edition. I don't know. I no longer have it, but I hear a lot of booktubers talking about Trollope and enjoying him. So he's a TBR author for me, for sure. So when I see him these days, I'm gathering him up. And then we'll finish with another Sherlock Holmes book. This is Arthur Conan Doyle, The Sign of Four. Don't think I've read this one. As a dense yellow fog swirls through the streets of London, a deep melancholy has descended on Sherlock Holmes, who sits in a cocaine-induced haze at 221B Baker Street. His mood is only lifted by a visit from a beautiful but distressed young woman, Mary Morstan, whose father vanished 10 years before. 4 years later, she began to receive an exquisite gift every year, a large, lustrous pearl. Now, she has an intriguing invitation to meet her unknown benefactor and urges Holmes and Watson to accompany her. And in the ensuing investigation, which involves a wronged woman, a stolen hoard of Indian treasure, a wooden-legged ruffian, a helpful dog, and a love affair, even the jaded Holmes is moved to exclaim, "Isn't it gorgeous?" How could you not want to read this story after that? Yeah, that's great. Sherlock Holmes, like I said, like this is like nostalgia for me. I really enjoyed the old Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes films. They were always on our UHF television channels, probably on the weekends, kind of in the evenings. And on my little black and white television set, I used to watch them. I went through a real phase with Sherlock Holmes stories. And then I read Hound of the Baskervilles and Study in Scarlet. I know I read too, but those might have been the only longer Sherlock Holmes stories I read. Anyway, that finishes bag number one. Let me go on to this, still in day one of the book sale, the half bag that I filled to finish out my $31 order on day one. Here's another Penguin Classics, and it is George Eliot's most famous book, Middlemarch. This is a real chunker, as you can see. And Middlemarch, I have read this book. I read it, I think it was a Modern Library edition, which I no longer have. And I have to confess, I didn't really get into Middlemarch. I liked the first part of it quite a bit, and then I stalled. And I did finish it, but it wasn't really engaging me. And this is another example of when I read a book and I have like a diminished experience of it. I don't always blame the author or the artifact. It's sometimes just my fault. It's sometimes like not the right time or place, or I was distracted. I wasn't at the right age to read it. I know this is a good book, and I know I need to give it another chance. It's too many other booktubers and critics adore this book, people that I respect, and having it back in a Penguin Classics edition is just a ticket. So I'm really, I'm not going to read this one right away, but eventually I hope to get back to it, give it another chance. What else do we have? All right, so in addition to the classics, this is such a vast book sale. There's like over 50,000 books, I think. And they also had DVDs. They used to sell CDs there, but for the last couple of years, they haven't. I guess those days are over, which saved me some browsing time. So I didn't have to pour through the CDs. I'm not really looking for CDs too much anyway, anymore. But so there's and the way they set this book sale up is really good. So it's kind of like these multi-purpose rooms, and probably around where the cafeteria is in the high school, and like the gym complex. So there's it was a big room where the classics were, but had like these long folding tables, like with kind of like these sort of low crates just filled with books. And they had like all the trade paperbacks were in there. There was a room to the side for like the more rare books. They had all the popular bestsellers, the hardcover fiction. They had like cookbooks and nature books and many, many, many different genres, the arts and crafts books. And then across, like on the other wing, there was like another even larger room where you found all the children's literature, history, biography, religion, philosophy, and science fiction and horror. I didn't find a section for Westerns, though, which I don't know. They had romance novels in the first room, plenty of those, but I didn't see Westerns. I don't know why. But anyway, they had a ton of sci-fi. And I went through that pretty carefully. But my problem with sci-fi is I'm not super familiar with all the authors, so I really don't know what I'm getting. And I was looking for names I recognized. I didn't come across too many, but I did find this one. And this is an author I want to try out. I haven't read anything by him. He's very famous, and that's Robert Silverberg. This is a book called The World Inside. I like the cover. I like the description on the back. It's a short sci-fi book. And so this is what this book's about. The year is 2381. The place is Urban Monad 116 of the constellation Chipitz. The population of this 1,000-story structure is 800,000 plus and always growing. The essence of life is to be blessworthy and to multiply, to afford one's neighbors any type of sexual fulfillment, and above all, to avoid the evil of frustration. But every world has its heretics, and there are those who question the quality of life in the Urbmons. On every level of the building, there are these hidden malcontents who feel such perverse desires as a longing for privacy, a wish to descend from the heights of Urbmon, a longing to walk on earth and bask in sunshine. Within these individuals lies danger, the seed of discontent with the vertical world of 2381. And in this stratified world of the 24th century, who is to say which are more truly human, the contented masses of Urbmon society or the rebel throwbacks to an earlier Earth? So yeah, not much indication of like what the plot of the book is, but I like the premise a lot. And yeah, I would like to maybe read this soon, like maybe this summer. I want to read more sci-fi in the summer, so we'll see. But it was cool to find a Robert Silverberg book. This is more of a nostalgia buy for me, a book I already have, and it's a mass market paperback, but it looks exactly like the edition I first read this author, and that is John Irving, The World According to Garp. And this is the movie tie-in version with Robin Williams on the cover, so it's nice to remember Robin Williams here as well. May he rest in peace. My memory is that even though I have bought the movie tie-in edition, I am certain that I read The World According to Garp before I saw the movie. I did see the movie when it came out, and I liked the movie. I would call it a 3-star movie, but I remember thinking at the time, as I usually do when I watch films, that the book was better. The book was so much better. Onward. More Penguin classics. How about some sagas? This is, I can't pronounce this, Rafunkel's Saga and Other Stories. Okay? 7 stories translated by Herman Paulsen exemplify the outstanding qualities of realistic fiction in medieval Iceland. There's this whole kind of world of medieval literature that I'm underexposed to, and these sagas are one of them. And it's funny, when we were brought up, we get educated. For me, the stuff that I was basically fed by my teachers, the books that were appearing on syllabi were like the classics of Greece and Rome, and the classics of modern fiction and poetry and modernism and all that. And you would have to, the only way you would get exposed to stuff like this would be if you took a medieval literature class, which I did not take. I had very little exposure to medieval literature until quite late in my life. So that hopefully rectifies that. I'm interested to try more sagas. Okay, here is what's called a Penguin Modern Classics edition of a book this is going back to a book I read in college, and it is A Passage to India by E.M. Forster. This was a good novel. I really liked it. Here is the description. That Marabar case was an event which threw the city of Chandrapur into a fever of racial feeling. Miss Quested, on a visit from England to the man she expected to marry, showed an interest in Indian ways of life, which was frowned upon by the sun-baked British community. She returns, alone and distressed, from an excursion to the caves in the company of a young Indian doctor. He is arrested on a charge of attempted assault, but when the case comes to trial, Miss Quested withdraws her accusation and the doctor is set free. Was she the victim of a hallucination, a complex, an unidentified intruder, or what? Yeah, that scene in the caves was, I remember, being very well rendered, and it was very ambiguous what actually happened there. So this is a novel I'd like to reread someday, and it's nice to have it in this Penguin Modern Classics edition. And it comes with a bookmark. Reader's Den. We're still in day one, folks. Okay, here is a series 2 Penguin Classics. I was happy to find this one. The More Medieval Literature, The Quest of the Holy Grail, translated by P.M. Matarazzo. This bright and colorful world of Arthurian romance lends itself to medieval allegory in The Quest of the Holy Grail. The varied and often dangerous peregrinations and encounters of Arthur's knights in their search for the Holy Grail symbolize man's equally perilous search for the grace of God. These chivalrous adventures sweeten the author's didactic pill, and the fusion of Christian symbolism and Celtic legend gives a mystic aura and tragic grandeur to the whole. The quest is, in fact, a renunciation of the courtly ideals of the romances sung by the early troubadours. I never thought of it that way. This is a Penguin Classic that I read in a Series 2 Penguin Classics edition, which I no longer have. There was, at one point, when I was selling stuff on eBay, I sold a lot of Penguin Classics that were not in the best condition. They were a little older, and they were books that I had read, and I think I was trying to clear shelf space. So this is a book that I honestly don't know when I'm going to revisit this, but it is in much better condition, and it's a third series Penguin Classic, so there's a different cover. It might be a different translation. I have to do my research. This is translated by Barbara Reynolds, and it's Ludovico Ariosto, Orlando Furioso, Part 1. So more, this is now like Renaissance romance. Owes a lot to the medieval romance. If you're going to read a book like Don Quixote, you have to familiarize yourself with works like this, I think, to fully appreciate what Cervantes was doing. But this is like verse, narrative, and very, very long. This is only part 1, but hey, for $1, I threw it in the bag. Why not? Life is short. Here's another classic by Mary Shelley, and that's Frankenstein. This is edited with an introduction and notes by Maurice Hindle. I've read Frankenstein. I can't remember. I probably read the 1831 edition. There's some debate of the two major editions, 1818 and 1831, as to which is better. A lot of people like the 1818 edition of Frankenstein. So this one, it says it's a recently revised edition. Maurice Hindle has made many editorial additions. These include a collation of the texts of 1818 and 1831 and the reprinting of Dr. John Polidori's The Vampire, making this companion tale of Frankenstein available for the first time. Well, that's kind of cool. Next up is a book that I have. Oh, great, it's right here. So I recently, this was not part of the book haul, but I found this, I think, at a Goodwill, Booker T. Washington, Up From Slavery, and Signet Classic Edition. And I found the Penguin Classics version at the Unionville book sale. So this is not in the greatest condition, like the back cover is somewhat creased. It's not marked up, though. And I think I will keep this one and get rid of this one. This one's actually in somewhat better condition, but it's got a little bit of markings on the edge. Some of the Penguin Classics at the book sale, someone had like written in magic marker on the edges and like totally ruining the volume for me. Like, why do people do that? Please don't do that to your books. Another Penguin Classics, William James, The Varieties of Religious Experience. I thought this was a cool find. It's real clean, floppy. Standing at the crossroads of psychology and religion, this groundbreaking work applied the scientific method to humankind's religious behavior. Interesting. And here's another Penguin Classic, John Racine, Phaedra. I think this is almost a duplicate for me, but I'm going to look it up. Yeah, so there's some differences here. I have a Penguin Classics second series, Phaedra and Other Plays, but this fourth series is just the play Phaedra, and I think it's a different translator. So I think that made it worth picking this up for $1. I like the cover art too. So yeah, added that to the bag. And then this is the last Penguin Classics from this bag, and it's Virgil the Aeneid, and it's a prose translation. This is a Series 2 Penguin Classics, translated by W.F. Jackson Knight. Did not have this in my collection, and it'll be fun to just read the Aeneid as prose. Maybe it's even better. And one last book from this bag, and it's a Penguin Pelican original, Gods and Myths of Northern Europe by H.R. Ellis Davidson. Tiw, Woden, Thunor, Frigg, these ancient northern deities gave their names to the very days of our week. Nevertheless, most of us know far more of Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and the classical deities. That's my situation. Recent researchers in archaeology and mythology have added to what was already a fairly consistent picture of the principal Scandinavian gods and goddesses. This study, the first popular treatment of the subject to appear in English for many years, is the work of a scholar who has long specialized in Norse and Germanic mythology. She describes the more familiar gods of war, of fertility, of the sky and the sea and the dead, and also discusses those most puzzling figures of Norse mythology, Heimdall, Balder, and Loki. All these deities were worshipped in the Viking Age, and the author has endeavored to relate their cults to daily life and to see why these pagan beliefs gave way in time to the Christian faith. So that is day one of the Unionville High School book sale. I'll be back with part two, day two, with my fill a bag for $15 haul. Stay tuned.